I regret to inform you of something you already know, but the 2025 Miami Dolphins are fundamentally broken.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. We don't just say it, we live it. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I was going to do another group therapy session, and then I was going to do like a mock draft, and then I was going to do like a big picture, like where do the Dolphins go from here? No, I'm not done with yesterday's game. We're not going to talk about the ins and outs, and we're not going to talk about the net yards on first downs offensively, and we're not going to talk about the penalties to continue to extend drives defensively after what would have been stops, and we're not going to talk about the poor self-awareness of the weather and the game that you tried to play because you were playing the Browns and you weren't playing the weather. We're not going to talk about those parts of the game. But what we are going to talk about is just how broken this team feels like it is right now. And NFL Network Ian Rappaport came out this morning about 9:30. It said no changes expected for the Dolphins this week. You know, Mike McDaniel and company, and then Stephen Ross really likes Mike. And then you hear Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk say on Football Night in America last night that the plan at the beginning of the season was that the Dolphins have always intended, or Stephen Ross has intended for Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier to have the full season before making decisions. And the unfortunate reality is 2 times in the last 5 years, this team has started 1-7 and 2-6, and then came back to be 8-8 playing into week 18. And I think, unfortunately, because of that, I don't think the gravity of this situation feels the way that it should. Now, I think it says something in some way, shape, or form when, 3 times in 5 years, you've been 1-7 or 2-6. And I'm certainly picking the Dolphins to lose to the Atlanta Falcons to get to 1-7. But they could win and get to 2-6. And then you'd say, hey, just like you were last year, all you need to go is go 6-2 over the next 8, and then you have a chance at a winning record, right? So no change is expected this week for Miami. And I am worried about the messaging there. We're going to talk about the messaging. We're going to talk about the personnel backfires. We're going to talk about the execution on the field. And the execution on the field, that ranges from the defense, that ranges to what style of game you tried to play, that ranges to the quarterback and the execution of the offense, which was catastrophically bad yesterday. This is now the 3rd time. I think you could look at Tua individually, and Tua is not the only problem with the Dolphins. I would still probably now the Browns game in particular, Tua was a top problem that Miami had. Decision making, ball placement, accuracy. All of those things were prevalent for you, and the defense played as well as it has. You threw an interception that was returned for a touchdown, and you threw another interception that started on the 2-yard line. But in the big picture of the whole scheme of this season, I wouldn't put Tua at the top of the list, but when you're getting paid what Tua is getting paid, you're expected to make it work. And right now it's not. We're tied for the league lead in interceptions. Our passer efficiency is way down. Our adjusted net yards per attempt is at a career low. Some of this, you can look in other places, but there's now been, out of 7 games, The Colts game was worse than any game Tua played last year. The Chargers game last week. Put it together in the fourth quarter for a nice comeback drive. I respect that effort in the fourth quarter. But the misses were still notable, and they were really rough. And then this performance might have been worse than the Indianapolis game. So you've now played multiple games that are worse than the worst game you played last year. And I understand Cole Strange, not a great answer for you at right guard. I understand two backups on the right side of the offensive line. I understand the play calling is as vanilla and as predictable as you could possibly dream up in your head. False start, 1st and 15. What are the Dolphins doing? Well, they're going to run that perimeter screen. Then you run that perimeter screen, but it's a backwards pass, and the receiver doesn't catch it. So now it goes down as lost rushing yards because it's a rush. And you can't push the ball past the line of scrimmage. And I understand the limitations that exist, and I understand the inclement weather that was there early in the game. And that goes to me, the execution on the field of again, the thought process going into the game is we're playing the Browns. We need to make sure the Browns are our opponent. The Browns came into this game and said, hey, we're going to play it close to the vest. We're going to try to run the ball. We're going to try to protect the ball offensively. We're going to try to play good defense. We'll do some field position stuff if we have to. We'll run our manufactured touches, but we'll get creative with what the design of those looks like. I thought the Malachi Corley rep was a great rep for them. Miami came out running the same. It's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. And then you get into the defensive side of things where the penalties are a perfect embodiment of just the attention to detail. And I think Minkah Fitzpatrick has a legitimate claim and argument for the pass interference call and whether or not that was actually pass interference. I think Jalen Phillips has a legitimate argument for left-handed quarterback back is to you through the mesh point, getting a feel for whether or not he has the ball. But missed tackles, DBs, playing passive in space, inviting ball carriers to get on top of them with momentum. Really frustrating stuff. The point of attack work up front is still not where it needs to be, whether it's the defensive ends, whether it's the defensive tackles. I thought off the TV copy, I haven't done the defensive all 22 yet, but I thought both the rookies played reasonably well playing the point of attack. I think on the big explosive run, I believe it was Benito Jones that got moved out of a gap. So it's not changing. There's no reinforcements that are coming this year. This is what you have to work with. And that goes into personnel backfires and issues that you have, risks that you took, things that you were content to allow stand pat with. We're going to talk about that next, including the latest development with Darren Waller. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried in hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's SAAD, software as a disservice. And that's where you need Rippling. Rippling is a unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos your software created. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and can be synced perfectly. It's simple to use. Gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions do apply. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions. But on Prize Picks, being right means you get paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it is good To be right, playing Prize Picks is so much fun. It's a simple way to add more excitement to your football. You can pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen passing yards, Saquon Barkley rushing touchdowns, Tua Tagovailoa interceptions. You name it, you're in the game. And I love how easy it is. You can quickly put together your lineup in less than a minute. And with their new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and does not return, it will not count against you. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So, personnel decisions that have come to a head for you. The best thing the Dolphins offense had going for it, the best thing, the last 2 weeks I got up here and got really excited about it. The 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends, load up, go heavy, create stress, conflict on structurally how you want to play Miami. Do you want to play in base because they can run on you? Do you want to play in nickel do you want to play in nickel because they can run on you? If you want to play in base, they'll pass. Out of 22 personnel. 22 personnel went up in smoke yesterday, which is ironic because in a game like a wet ball game and wet ball game, heavy personnel is exactly what you'd love to be able to throw at a team because it's going to be a close to the vest, sloppy contest. And if you're not going to play the game that way, you're probably going to finish with 4 turnovers. And that's what the Dolphins did. But Darren Waller had a pec injury, played a little over a dozen snaps, was not targeted, and is now doing imaging today per Drew Rosenhaus, courtesy of Josh Moser, to get a feel for what the issue is with his pec. And that is bad news for the 22 personnel, because if you're going to continue to do it, that means, unless you're going to elevate to Greg Dulcich, it's Tanner Conner time. And Tanner Conner, bless him, has an opportunity to make a catch going down to the ground. He almost trips over his own feet, catching a wide open ball on the sideline, up the right sideline. There's a few too many players on this roster that I think if they were subjected to waivers and then free agency, I don't think they would sign with another team. And they're on the active 53-man roster. Tanner Conner, I think, is one of those players. And that, for me, is, yes, he can run. Yes, he's a former wide receiver, so he can catch the ball. We've seen what it's looked like. And we saw when Waller came back how it opened the door for them to play some 2 tight end stuff with Julian Hill. They have not been interested in doing it with Tanner Conner because they tried it in week 1 and the results were catastrophic. And we knew tight end was a spot. We knew the secondary was a spot. What'd they do this week in the secondary? Anthony Weaver on Thursday last week. I want to set the scene, okay? As you know, I'm getting up in the chair. I'm getting real excited here. This is Kyle's not here today. This is KFC, to use the acronym that's been coined for me by my friends Seth and OJ over at the Fish Tank. KFC is checking in today to run the show, not Kyle. I'll let you use your imagination what KFC stands for. Anthony Weaver gets up on the podium and says, in question, the Dante Trader missed tackle against Ladd McConkey last week to set up the game-winning field goal for the Chargers. Well, it was coverage miscommunication. Somebody else falls off their player. Wasn't really Dante's responsibility, but he tries to make amends and cover up somebody else's mistake and unfortunately overruns and misses the tackle. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the explanation on Thursday. Friday, Minkah Fitzpatrick, player availability, is talking. And Minkah, give him all the credit in the world. In a locker room that seems to be full of way too many players that don't want to have an honest conversation and look themselves in the eye and talk about what mistakes they made, Minkah said, I heard cut call from the safety. We did it a bunch, but I haven't been up in the nickel position to do it. I hear cut. I think my route is getting cut, so I drop off. As it turns out, the cut call was for the safety on the back end. So I fell off that route and I shouldn't have, and I need to do it better next time. And again, I'm paraphrasing what Minka Fitzpatrick says. Dante told Dante to keep his head up and I can not put him in that situation next time to try to cover up for somebody else's mistake. You know who didn't play at all on defense in week 7? Dante Trader, the guy who got recused of responsibility for the original assignment in question. Now, did he still overrun and miss the tackle? Yes, he did. He didn't play a single defensive snap. So out of all of the performance issues that you have, that's the one that you're going to come down on? The 5th-round rookie safety that you've been talking up, even when he wasn't practicing in training camp, going back to training camp, he was getting gassed up. And he does some nice things. Do I wish he was a little faster? Yeah. Does he need more experience? Yeah. But if you're full on in a youth movement and there was a learning opportunity here, and the DC and the star player on defense both raise their hands and say, hey, there's some other responsibility here for guys other than Trader on this play in question. And it could have very easily been avoided if everybody else did their job. And the only move you make is you sit down Trader? I don't know. Matthew Judon, late ad, healthy scratch on Sunday. Didn't play. And after how he played against the Chargers, I think it was a good decision. So at least on that side of the ball, you see some shuffling, right? We've kind of opened the door for Jack Jones and Ethan Bonner to have a competition. Judon's a healthy scratch in this game. Trader, they sit down after the missed tackle, even though everybody else involved in that rep said that it was not necessarily his fault up until the missed tackle. I can at least appreciate some changes in that regard. But it underscores some areas that you knew were problems for you. You knew the secondary was going to be a problem, and we signed Jack Jones in early August, and we signed Rasul Douglas in late August, and Matthew Judon joined the team and got $3 million. I mean, you didn't sign anybody for $3 million in free agency for like 4 months. Now, you obviously had your early window where James Daniels got a contract. But like, you could take Jack Jones, Rasul Douglas, and one other player, and Daniel Brunskill. It's just an example. Those 3 guys got as much money as Matthew Judon did combined. And Judon's been such a flop through 6 weeks. He's a healthy scratch for the 7th game. And is there a chance where maybe you're shopping him for a late round draft pick and you didn't want to play him in case he gets hurt? Sure. But the play's been just as bad. Where I think you'd be justified to not play him anyway, even if it was just a trade maneuver. Zach Wilson gets $6 million with incentives up to 10 on a 1-year deal. You got Mac Jones out here getting 2-year deals. You got Trey Lance out here getting a fraction of the money. Zach got 1 for 6, incentives up to 10. Inactive 3rd-string quarterback by week 7. Just throwing stuff at the wall is what it feels like. Having seen how it played out. And I try to be fair. I try to give everything an opportunity to understand why and what the thought process is and how it works and how it would work and what you're trying to achieve. And I try not to judge until you're in a position to have a body of work in which you can judge the team on. And I have more than enough body of work to know who Chris Grier is as an executive at this point. I have more than enough body of work to judge who Mike McDaniel is as the head coach of this football team at this point. I thought his quote about we need to find out who we are, a total gas, real knee slapper. It's that I think you should leave meme with the guy with the hot dog suit on, and we're all trying to find the guy who did this, right? I know who you are. I know who you were 2 weeks ago against Carolina. as a football team. And I know where it starts, top down. And unfortunately, Tua Tagovailoa has regressed into the player that his biggest critics have insisted that he was for years. And he hasn't been that player until recently. But there's no question the regression is very real. And the longer that this goes, the more I am a fan of the idea of simply starting fresh in all of those spots. I was pro starting fresh with an executive last offseason by week 18. You've fallen into a lot of the same traps from a leadership and coaching standpoint. The players continue. Patrick Paul yesterday talked about we need to stop talking about it and just do it. They talk, we do has been a thing for 4 months. And you're still talking about how we need to stop talking about it in week 7, the week before Halloween. The messaging is not sunk in. They're not listening. And you got smoked by a 1-5 Browns team that hadn't scored more than 17 points in like 10 games. And you gave up 31. And you scored 6. Give me a break. Messaging just as broken as the rest of it. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You could feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like professional football players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. NFL season is in full swing. FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss right now. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. About FanDuel allows you to play any way that you like to, whether that's parlays, player props, live lines, you name it. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something in the action for yourself. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Please allow me to check my timeline and make sure that there's not anything that I am missing. I am always leery about recording on Mondays because you never know what news is going to drop, even though we already got the news from Ian Rappaport. No changes expected for the Dolphins, which also brings me to the messaging element of why I think this team is fundamentally broken. This team last year disappointed. They started 2-6. They stuck together. Tua comes back. They have a 6-2 stretch. He goes 5-2 in that stretch. He misses the final 2 games of the season, including a win in Cleveland to get to 8-8. And then you lose the week 18 game to fall to 8-9. You're eliminated from the playoffs. Tyreek Hill throws a hissy fit in the locker room after the fact, says he wants to leave. It comes out that there's all kinds of team culture issues, and guys can't be accountable to one another, and we can't be available to one another to talk about mistakes. And there's a tardiness with meetings, and we find out there's a Fab 5 of fines with 5 guys are responsible for half the team's fines last year. A, B, C, X, Y, and D. All of these issues in a very disappointing season. Who paid for it? Who paid for it? Who is accountable for it? They made Jalen Ramsey accountable for it. They moved Jalen Ramsey, but it took until July to get it done. He still got all his money anyway. Dolphins actually paid him more to go away. Tyreek Hill has what Tyreek Hill had in the locker room. In fact, I saw he had some passive aggressive post on social media last night. Tyreek Hill is allowed to come back. Tyreek Hill is one of the primary offenders of the things that ailed the Dolphins last year. And we talked a big game about going to exit interviews. If you're not going to be able to show up to meetings, what you're telling me is you don't want to be here and you don't want to be a member of the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill was allowed to come back. And now from the ownership down, we're in our second consecutive season with at least 6 losses before Halloween. At least 6. Owner puts out the statement, the prepackaged graphic at the end of the Week 18 game, fully committed. Standards not to our standard. Don't just the status quo is not good enough. Blah 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 blah. And here we are, and it is very clear if you're in the weeds with this football team every day, like I know all of you who tune in every day are, and these beat reporters. I mean, Barry Jackson is on one about Stephen Ross and the tone and the temperature check of the organization. I can see it. I'm not even there every day. I know that's a big badge of honor for some people to remind others of if they are or aren't there every day. I'm not even there, and I can see because I read the press conferences. I hear the quotes. And I do talk to people who are there every day behind the scenes. It's players are getting negative or are getting positive reinforcement by continuing to embrace status quo for the second consecutive season with 6+ losses before Halloween. It's okay to come up short. It's okay to miss our expectations. We've been here before. We'll just come back again. It is what it is. Hang in there. It's like the cat on the poster, the motivational poster. Hang in there, baby. Hang on that clothesline just a little longer. It's okay. And if you set career lows with this team and you stomp your feet at the end of the year and talk about how much you want to leave because it's not good for you anymore, but then you change your mind, it's okay. You can come back. We need you. It's okay. No worries. From a coaching perspective, hey, I really like you, Mike. And I like Mike McDaniel too. I got a great deal of respect for Mike McDaniel with the journey that he's been on. But I'm at the point I don't think he's fit to be an NFL head coach. I like Tua Tagovailoa. I respect the work that it took for him to get back from the hip injury that he had at Alabama. And I respect that he went through with the early years of his career in Miami to prove himself to be a productive NFL quarterback, productive starting NFL quarterback in the early years of the McDaniel era. But it is adapt or die. It is an adapt or die league. And there's been no adaptation. So I've had my fill, right? It's not personal. It's about the results. It is a process. You have to be process-oriented to be in it, but it is a results-oriented league, and you are judged on results. And the judgment of the results that the Dolphins are getting, not facilitating any actionable items of change, just gives more positive reinforcement to every member of the organization that it's okay. There's no statement from Stephen Ross. There's no presence of Stephen Ross. Chris Grier's nowhere to be found. Well, I know went on a scouting trip. I wouldn't worry about Chris Grier on a scouting trip, though. He was at South Carolina for South Carolina, Oklahoma this week. But there were multiple GMs last year that went on scouting trips into November who were fired at the end of the season. So I don't think that means anything for Chris Grier and his job status. And from the players' perspective, they keep hearing the same messaging. Mike is now threatening, everything's on the table. We'll change our style of play if we have to. That was about the most infuriating quote I've heard my entire life because we've been asking you to change the style of play for 2 years because it was evident it needed to change and you haven't changed it. Everybody hears the same messaging. The results are not produced and nothing changes. And that to me is a much more important piece of the puzzle than making a change for the sake of trying to save your season. This season is over, respectfully. They're going to play the games. There's things that are going to be important to assess throughout the games. But your big picture aspirations, the big picture of this season It is over. And it is October 20th. It is over. So I will continue to watch players and decide who plays like they give a, you know what, and deserves to be here. But I would love for there to be some urgency within this building. And based on how the Dolphins players respond to every other message that Mike McDaniel has given them all offseason, why should I think him threatening that if you consistently hurt the team, I have no choice but to evaluate another player? You just didn't follow through when you said if people can't show up to meetings, they don't want to be here because you kept Tyreek Hill. Why should I have any faith and belief that these players are going to say, oh, Mike might bench me. Let me kick it into high gear now. They say, oh, we're going to lose again, and nothing's going to happen until something happens. And there's only one person, at the end of the day, one person who's ultimately responsible for something happening or not. Pass the stick, Steve. I'm out of here. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in here on Locked On Dolphins.